At my old studio back in the Arts District, I lived, when there was nobody around. I had an empty studio, and I had a bunch of my work all over the studio. And I had a series of black and whites of old folks from basically a nursing home. That was a series I had up there. And these two ladies at the time, or girls, Christine and Diane from Go for Broke, saw them and saw that I was able to bring out dignity and strength from these old ladies, even though they're basically at the end of their lives, and they were not in the best situation at these nursing homes. It was Christmas time, I still remember. They had a little teeny tiny Christmas tree, sitting on the TV set, and it was kind of heartbreaking to see them. But they all came out and they put on their best clothes to take these photos. But during that time, even though it was black and white and kind of serious, I tried to bring out some strength toward them. I wasn't trying to make them big smiles or anything, just shooting them how they were. And that's kind of the basis of, they wanted me to bring out the personality of these veterans, because these veterans are very, lack of a better word, humble and shy. They never want their picture taken. They never want to be the center of a spotlight. Just basically like Japanese culture, there's not one individual. They're all always a unit. So to have one person take a picture was very difficult. That's why the first series, all of them wore the same, their Go for Broke veteran outfit. No one was any different, because that was the only way to get them to all come as a group and say, hey, these guys are doing it, why don't you do it? Oh, no, I don't want to do it, because that guy's really important, not me. And every single person would say that, so there would be nothing. But we were able to get them to at least try and shoot as a group, and that's what we did. And from that, because now you're talking about 50 guys that are basically wearing white shirts, all looking the same. They're old Japanese guys. How am I supposed to make them look different? So that was the main challenge. What I tried to do is get them to bring out, I talked to them a little bit and bring out some kind of a personality trait that I saw. What can I do in 5 minutes or 10 minutes that I had them? I was able to speak to them a little bit, and hopefully they would trust me, and I was able to try and bring out something that I saw, just a feeling, and that's the only time I could do. They didn't have pictures of these guys, only just candids, but a professional portrait, I don't think any of those guys have done, except for maybe when they're in the Army. So they wanted to have something that showed these guys as the Go for Broke unit. These are all them, and it was a great idea. They were able to get a group of people who hate having their picture taken, who hate any kind of attention toward them, but to come together and do this. And it was a special project for the Times, and probably the only one that I know of. Doing the second project was much more difficult, because after the first project, let's say we finished in 2001-ish, like I said, we finished printing and showing it around just a few places. I don't think a lot of people have seen these, only in the offices, and maybe just a small showing. 2002, 2003 was probably the last time anyone's ever seen these. Then I kept shooting the events, I kept seeing these guys, and I said, we need to continue. There's a lot more of these veterans we haven't shot. Or maybe I'd like to take my own portraits of my version of them, because it was a big challenge shooting them all the same. If you try and shoot 20 different people all wearing the same outfits with the same background, you run into challenges where their personality needs to come out. Not to say that Japanese Americans don't have a lot of personality, but it is difficult to bring it out. They are not the most animated of men. So what I did was, I thought, let me try and take photos of them in their own clothes. So I did a test here in my old studio, and shot them in their own clothes. What happened is that they, even myself, I looked at it and something wasn't right. They looked like senior citizens, they looked kind of like older men, they had their members only jacket or their polo shirt, and it just looked like older Japanese men. I showed it around to a few people, and some people, oh, that guy's cute, or that's funny, or this and that, and it wasn't the correct reaction that I wanted to get. So I thought, maybe I should try and shoot them in their uniforms, or shoot them in some kind of army wear that people can identify that these are the same guys in World War II. So I did another test. Had a couple of volunteers, Toke and Toe, I still remember their names. Again, I shot them. And all they were wearing is just the Army green drab. And maybe what they were wearing came out, or how I shot it, but the whole thing was different, because now when I showed the picture, people go, oh, that's really cool, because now I think they can kind of see that I was trying to shoot them, that these guys were the soldiers. These were the men that fought in World War II. This is a portrait of not only To Yoshino, but he was the one that was actually fighting in World War II. And that was the big difference. It wasn't just a senior citizen that you see. It was actually, this was an Army veteran, this is what he looked like, this is his story. And that's kind of the kind of personality I want to bring out. A lot of times what I'd have to do is go through a person that knew them much better than me, because a lot of times these veterans didn't trust some outsider coming and just taking photos of them, even though I've worked for Go for Broke and some of these other Japanese veteran associations for years. So I would go through different contexts. Usually they were ladies, because the veterans liked ladies. I asked them to do something, nothing. The ladies asked them, oh sure, they just hop to it there. But so basically I would go through a contact and try and get them to come out. I would try to get the clothes is a hard thing, because there were years, most of these guys have gained weight. Most of them can't fit into their uniforms. A lot of these uniforms were thrown away or given away. And it's very sad to hear that this part of history is gone forever, because the family didn't want them. You know, these guys go, oh, who's going to want this? And they've just tossed it. Hear that story so many times, and it just crushes me when I hear that. But sometimes I was able to get originals, even though they couldn't fit into them. But most of the time I had to use. They had to be made. There's a couple companies that make these uniforms. For even one time, for a couple years, they didn't have the material, so they couldn't make them. But I made X amount of pants, X amount of shirts, a few jackets, and so they would have something to wear. Took up my entire suitcase every time I would go, because they're wool and they're heavy. But a lot of these things, you know, this is how I would travel. So realistically, if I could get a few guys to come and put on the uniform, I was just ecstatic. Getting them to shoot, sometimes took more time. Actually, it did. It took more time to talk to them, getting to do that, and put on the clothes and then shoot. And this is after they're already there. Okay, they already came to shoot. They need, you have to beg them in then at that time. So it was really difficult to get them to continue on with the project. There was many obstacles trying to get them to take the picture. Because I'm kind of directing them a little bit, or asking them questions of what to do, it naturally comes out. These guys are very animated. They're very fun. Each of them has stories. They're older guys. They're not afraid anymore. But humble is the right word. So bringing out something, it takes a while for it to happen. And then once it does, I'm able to get a few shots. There are some guys, they're just still stone. and it's much harder, and so I shoot them like that. Other guys, they have, they talk about what made them happy, and I have them do a few moves, or some like dance, some like boxing, a lot like boxing. Some just talked about their experiences, and they talk with their hands, so I kind of shot them as they were talking. So everyone was a little bit different, but I think for the most part, because the camera was there, I think that it gave them a reason to try and do something different, because a lot of times if you tell them to take a picture, I don't know if you know very many Japanese families, but they all pretty much stand in line from tallest to shortest, and that's just the way you do it. Even my family, that's how my old pictures, tallest to shortest, that's it. There was no real time limit, but when I shot black and white, I had a roll of 120 film, and those cost money. And so each roll of 120 film, I could get, let's see, 10 shots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 shots. And I was trying to limit it to maybe a roll and a half per person, okay, because it costs money. So between that, if I had, if I was on a roll, I could shoot a little quicker. If I was trying to get something out of them, I would take my time. Much different shooting style than now. There was no rapid fire, and this is a Pentax 6x7. If you know those things, you click the button, you have to wind it, and then you can shoot. If you're really fast, you could probably shoot one every 3/4 of a second, if you're lucky. But realistically, I spent about 15 minutes total per person talking and then shooting. When I started to do the color ones, now these guys are quite a bit older, the average age range. Some of them had a harder time standing, other ones would get tired, this and that, so that also played into factor. But realistically, about the same time. I'd shoot them for about 10-15 minutes and talk to them for a little bit. But it was a short period of time. Basically to figure out what I wanted to get, how I wanted to do that, and if they had some personality to show, then I would have to figure that out really quickly. I tried to go to where they're at, and sometimes they were there and sometimes they weren't, and a lot of times in Hawaii they would show up hours later. So I never knew if I was going to get a shot or not when I went to some of these places and wait for them. I did try and track a lot of them down and go to their house and try and find out where they were. And so the answer is, if I could get them to be in a group and all show up, that was fantastic. I think that happened maybe, during the black and white series it happened, and then maybe 2 other times where we set up and people actually showed up. Other times it was basically make a few phone calls, I know this person, I know that person, and they would meet at the clubhouse, or usually at the clubhouse, and we'd go there. Other times, oh, this person will do it, but you have to go there. So I'd drive out to there. And sometimes they'd get a few guys together, and I would shoot 2 or 3 guys at the time. Well, a lot of times it was very discouraging. Sometimes I would go and only one person would shoot, or sometimes they would say, oh, I don't want to do it, or every time they would say, oh, that guy's important, take his picture, and then that other guy would say, oh, take that guy's picture, he's more important than me, and it would just be the runaround. Finally, I would get some guys, and usually it was the leader guys, to get them to do it, but to get being able to shoot. And once one guy shot, then the other guy would come, and then the other guy would come, and it kind of worked out. But yes, there were many times I just said, this is too hard, forget it. They don't want their picture taken, they're not showing up. This group doesn't want me to go, they don't know who I am. A lot of red tape. And I think the main thing is that these guys fought so hard and so many things happened to them. I really wanted to show these pictures and really show people, and what I'm doing is nothing compared to what they did. So I have to fight harder. I have to continue to do this, and that's what kept me going. Their fight is nothing compared to what I'm doing now, so I just had to fight harder, and that's what I did.